Okay, let's call for a vote on the motion.
Motion carries with Supervisor Colfax dissenting.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a long afternoon for one item. This board will not stifle public expression, and this is an example of that. Let's see. Let's take up a fairly easy one now.
Mr. Chairman, while our sheriff is still here, could I
ask him a question?
Yeah, it's more of a comment. Sheriff, with all the confusion, that we have, I believe that the support of the board for this adoption of the medical cultivation ordinance here this afternoon. Once that's been done, would you make a special effort or somebody or to basically tell people what is in place? I think there's people out there that don't read the newspapers.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity.
I realize ignorance of the law is no excuse, or that's what they said, but it's been so many back and forth issues, so I think we owe a special way to try to notify people what's acceptable and what's not.
I couldn't agree more with you, Supervisor Pinches, and ignorance isn't an excuse or a defense. However, it's fair to say with Proposition 215, was Measure G, with Senate Bill 420, with the ordinance that was passed in August by this board, that everybody's confused. Yeah. And if the board would support me, I would prepare a simple mail-out postcard that would go to every registered voter in the county that would specifically outline what the law is. How can we expect people to follow the law when there's so many laws on the books? And if the new Criminal Justice Committee, which I'm not sure who is on, but if they want to work with me, and I will pledge my support to them to work on this, to get the word out through public service announcements and so forth, so we can have people, as I said last month, begin to assist with voluntary compliance, because that's the crux of law enforcement. In a democracy, law enforcement depends on the citizens performing voluntary compliance.
Not only registered voters, I think it should go out all to the list of all ownership of property too.
Sure,
because this new ordinance deals with per parcel.
Well, I don't know what the laws pertaining to sending out tax bills are, but we would prepare an insert if the tax assessor would allow us to have it put in the mailings that go out twice a year.
Yeah, but the problem is the mailings for taxes already went out. The first installment was due, and so there won't be another mailing go out until next year. And I don't think we need to let a year pass. I mean, I would support the mailing cost of expense, because with all this confusion and everything, I think we owe it to not just voters out there, but all landowners, to what's acceptable and what's not.
I agree. Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you, Sheriff.
And maybe you could come back with a cost estimate of doing that or something, or agenda item to deal with that.
Bring it to the committee.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Has a committee been selected? Thank you.
My two supervisors to the right.
Thank you very much.
So we can get it out before spring.
Okay, are you talking about getting one out before the June vote?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Because I'm assuming that this cultivation ordinance that will be adopted this afternoon.
Okay.
Which deals with the 25 plants.
Supervisor Pinches, absolutely. We can work on that, and we can focus on hopefully getting it out in conjunction with the Justice Committee.
I think we have an obligation to let all voters and all property owners know what's acceptable and what's not.
And we can put out some ads in the paper. Of course we can.
Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor Pinches. Let's move along. Relatively easy item 6D. Board of Supervisors delegation to travel to Washington, D.C. for purpose of federal legislation, advocacy, and related travel expense. CEO's office, Mr. Taylor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, board members. The item before you is whether the Board of Supervisors would like to send a delegation of supervisors to Washington, D.C. to advocate for your legislative platform that we talked about this morning. When Mr. Paul Schlesinger visited in December, and Mr. Schlesinger is the county's Washington lobbyist, works for Alcalde and Fay legislative advocates. We had talked about sending that delegation in early February, February 6th through the 8th. So the item that I had prepared for the board talks about that. The CEO recommends that the General Government Committee